Hey everyone, welcome to the Gro Show. On today's episode, we're breaking down NPK and why it's important in your grow.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Legal Minute. A little piece in cannabis law that we're going to do with each podcast. And this week I'm just going to talk about where it's legal and where it's not legal. As of March 31st, 2024, 4 states, basically South Carolina, Idaho, Nebraska, and Kansas are still pretty much illegal in the cannabis world. Wherever you are, you can log on to normal.org, NORML.org. A shout out to those guys. They've been looking after us and looking after our laws since back in the 70s. And they're still around today looking out for us. So if you log on there, you can check out your state, find out where you stand. That way you know what's going on and what state you might want to spend your vacation money in this summer. And with that, we'll go back to Justin.
Hey, thanks for that update, Armann. For those unfamiliar with NPK, that's going to be nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. We're going to touch on each one in veg and in flower, why each one's important for different parts of your grow, and how it affects the overall outcome of what you do, right from the start all the way to the end. We're going to have a cost analysis, and we're going to try to help you guys do this the cheapest way possible while getting organic grows that are good to smoke, that feel like they've been flushed the whole time.
With no flushing.
With no flushing. First things first, every part of the NPK is essential. Without any of them, you'll be unsuccessful at cultivation on just about every level. What we're aiming to do is an organic method, so we want everything to slowly break down to provide us a nice even coverage of all of these 3 major macronutrients.
Right.
First things first is nitrogen. Nitrogen is going to be super important during the veg state primarily. It helps grow greenage. It helps grow all the things, all the leaves, all the solar panels that your plant's going to take. And the best part about it is that these leaves that get created by nitrogen also produce nitrogen. Once your plant gets to a certain stage, you can cut it down and chop and drop leaves, stick those right back into the dirt. They'll give you a good slow breakdown of nitrogen that your plant will eat up as it grows and as everything decays. Just like in nature, the forest feeds itself with its leaves. So after you get a little bit of this extra foliage, you're going to cut it down, stick it right into your planter, and it's going to slowly help break things down. Another good method is cover crop. You can grow clover. There's a bunch of different types of clover that you can grow. There's a bunch of different types of seed mixes that you can lay out in your bed, and it helps build everything up. And the good part about it is you're just sprouting seeds, so they don't need nitrogen to sprout. Everything's within the seed. So then once it all grows up, you cut all that down, and you've got a bunch of free nitrogen that you let decay for a little bit. Stick your plant in there, and it's going to be ready to roll as soon as you stick in for veg.
Your cover crop is more, that's easier to do in like a large planter, right? And more of an open planter.
Yeah.
More than maybe a 5 or 10 gallon pot, right?
Yeah, you definitely don't get the same amount in a 5 gallon that you will in a bigger container.
Right.
But it still helps. It's still going to give you some breakdown, some organic
So
material.
you can do that in a 10 gallon pot as well?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right.
You can do it. You can, I mean, it's all, it's ratioed out, right? So if you have a 5 gallon and you cover crop the whole thing nice and bushy and you cut it all down, though it's not a big amount of cover crop, it'll still be enough greenage
still beneficial
for your 5 gallon for the size that you're working with.
Okay.
That's a pretty good, easy, cheap way to get yourself some nitrogen.
Yeah.
It's not fast acting. It's not going to be instant, but we aim to have everything kind of go slow. We like the pretty much water only method.
Yeah.
Really, we're trying to be ahead of everything as it all comes down. When we're growing stuff, it's not going in our grow if it's not organic.
Right.
And that does mean slow release, slow breakdown, and you have to be preemptive when you're going this method. But it's a lot easier once you figure out things, even just the basics like NPK.
Right, and thinking ahead will save you a lot of headache down the road. But it is a basic method. It's, you know, in nature, if they don't have to do it in nature, then you really don't have to do it in your grow at home. I mean, whatever nature intended, that's all you got to supply.
That's a good point.
And it pretty much comes down to NPK, light, and water.
Really?
Other stuff we'll talk about in other segments.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Without these 3, you're not getting anywhere.
You're not getting started.
You're not getting anywhere.
You're not getting started,
you know?
right?
So one of the things that's pretty important to watch out for is too much nitrogen. So if you don't go the organic method, or you pre-pack your soil a little bit too aggressive, they call it hot, a little too much nutrients right off the rip, can have a negative effect. The plant only wants what it can take in, and when it's a little plant, when it's a little tiny seedling, you're not going to be needing pounds of nitrogen. You're not going to need the heaviest weight of it you can find. You're going to need just a little bit until that plant gets bigger and bigger, and then it'll eat more nitrogen and it'll require more.
And most of what the plant will need at that stage is actually in any quality starter soil that you use, or garden soil will have everything the plant needs at that thing. You shouldn't, at that point, you shouldn't have to add anything until, you know,
if you're using a bagged soil, you
bagged soil is going to get you through your first month anyway.
Easy, easy. Even small ones. We like to use Fox Farm Happy Frog. That's one of our nice base soils, and we like it because it doesn't have too much in it. It's kind of almost an inert soil where it's pretty soft. So when we add things like root organics powder for some extra nitrogen in it, you're not really battling the soil.
Right.
So right off the rip, if you just use your regular Happy Frog, you're, like you said, you're getting 3 weeks, you're getting a month.
Yeah.
Before that plant's going to start showing yellowing.
And it's a great starter soil that you can, you can take it and top dress down the road as you're going, and feed it and build it into what you want, what your plant needs and what your plants require.
Big time. You're going to see yellowing of leaves, and you're going to see some leaf curling if you have too much nitrogen. And if you have too much nitrogen, it can be really hard if you went with a synthetic root and you just poured it straight into your planter, and you went with a tea style and you poured it in. Your plant is only going to be drinking water that's loaded with nitrogen. It can easily be too much too quick.
It can kill your plant.
It can kill your plant pretty fast.
Yeah.
You'll stunt the growth with too much of any of these. Too much nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium, and any one of them will stunt the growth of your plant if you don't have these levels correct. That's why we're touching on them today, and that's why we want to help you guys get something growing. Because without it, you're going to be spinning your wheels. The first few grows I had, I couldn't even get through vegetation. I couldn't even get it through veg without, like, by the time I got to flower, the plant was struggling for everything so bad.
Yeah, we all make our mistakes.
Because these levels were crazy.
Yeah.
They were all over the place.
That's what we're here for, trying to help you avoid a few of the things that we've done.
Trying to help you save a couple bucks, not have to experiment, and you can kind of figure out the basics, get your footing, and then you can become a mad scientist afterwards.
Right.
But the organic method, at least for us, it's an easier way to control everything because you're not battling yourself, really, in all honesty. Like he said, you get ahead of it, you get preemptive with it, and you really prevent yourself from running into roadblocks, and you help everything go nice and smooth.
Yeah. And when you start off with your seedlings, NPK, we talk about NPK and NPK to get started. When you first start off, if you're going from seed and you're starting with seed, your seeds require nothing.
Nothing.
Whatever your seed needs to become a sprout and become a seedling is in the seed, all the way until the root comes out and the seed splits and it comes up and it breaks the surface of the soil. All the energy and all the nutrients it needs is all contained in the seed itself. It's like a nucleus that encases everything it needs to get started. It's once it hits that point, and once it breaks the surface of the soil and starts looking for light, and the photosynthesis process starts, that's when the NPK requirements that we're talking about today come into effect.
That's right. That's completely
and again, in moderation, because
true.
Again, more is not better.
More is
never ever better in your garden and in your grow.
One thing that's great with organic is you can hit it lightly, and then if you're not seeing the results you want in a couple days, you can go again a little bit heavier, but you're always going to be a couple days behind. If you're using a synthetic method and you go half of the value and you hit it, you're going to see kind of like an instant result. But if that instant result is too much, you can't back it off. You can't unscoop the water you just poured into your planter.
Right.
So that's pretty much how nitrogen plays a part of your vegetation growth. All right, so that's how nitrogen helps in veg. How about flowering?
In flowering, the nitrogen demands may not seem as much as in veg. It's still required, of course. It's an important part of NPK, and it's an important part of the flowering. But usually by that stage, I continue to chop and drop into the soil, let a natural breakdown of plant matter continually feed the nitrogen into the soil. I don't really do much as a further amendment at that point. One thing to consider is when you're running through the end of your veg stage and you're preparing, especially if you're doing photo plants, and you're preparing to enter the flower stage, keeping your nitrogen level on a constant high side, not an over amount of nitrogen, but keeping your requirements up and steady where it should be, will postpone your flowering until you're ready to switch your light cycle and put your plants into flowering. At which time, when you drop the nitrogen and go down to more of a maintenance level of nitrogen, that will promote a vigorous change into flowering for your plants.
Right. And since we do everything indoor, you can control that really well. We'll get into that more with a light cycle episode. But essentially, you know, you want to maintain a decent level from what I'm hearing. You want to keep it not too aggressive when you're getting ready to flip. And you want to kind of taper down at the end of veg.
Yeah, taper it down. Like I said, I really pretty much just dropping your plant matter in. That will pretty much keep you where you need to be with your nitrogen.
That's awesome.
As long as your soil was where it should be when you entered flower, then that should be enough to keep you going until harvest.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to talk about is these fabric pots. We're going to do a little bit of a product overview section where we once a week we review a product that we like in our grow, and we give a little touch on why we think it's important for some people. These fabric pots, if you guys haven't used these yet and you don't use these for your indoor grows, you're missing out.
Yeah, I think so.
You're missing out. So we'll unfold this one. It's a fresh out of the package. We'll just pop it open. This one is just a cheapo brand.
Is that 5 gallon?
Yeah. This one's not any brand specific. It's just a easy little 5-pack, but you get 5 or 10 of them. I'll post all the pictures and all the links for everything we buy. But you get about, I think this one was a 5-pack of 5 gallons for like $15 or so.
And these cheaper pots, these here, don't be fooled into thinking you have to buy from one of the main brand suppliers or anything else. These cheap pots work absolutely fine, and they'll deliver just as well as the bigger pots.
You can see the light through it. It's an aerated pot, so that when you pour too much water in, it has a way out. Unless you literally put mud in one of these, where you put clay and compact it like a rock.
Yeah. Everything,
like we were talking about Happy Frog Fox Farm, literally you put that in this pot and you put water in it and it will run out with ease, with no problem. It's got handles if you need to move them around. The handles are pretty sturdy. They're like double, triple stitched. This holds 5 gallons, and on average, one of these will grow you a pretty decent yield.
Yes.
I think on average we probably pull around like 60 to 70 grams out of a 5 gallon.
Yeah, I've pulled 60 out of a 5 gallon. Absolutely.
And considering
on a photo.
Yeah. Autos are a little more unpredictable per se. But something like this is super cheap, super easy. You get extra aeration from just your planter. If you use a plastic one or you use a ceramic one, they'll do the job, but you have to be an expert at watering. These really help take a lot of the
guesswork out.
A lot of the guesswork out. You know, you really just put your dirt in.
And once you fill it up, you know, it looks kind of floppy here as we're showing it to you. But once you put the dirt in, these really stand really rigid. They round right up, and they look like a regular pot when the soil gets in and everything settles out. I think you'd be really happy with them. You can get trays to put underneath.
Yep. Oh, I love drip trays.
Again, look at your discount stores and stuff like that. You don't have to go to a garden supply or something like that. There's a lot of options out there.
A lot of choices. I've seen a lot of places.
I think I found trays under my 5 gallons for like $1.50.
Yep.
At a local discount dollar store, that kind of thing.
These things are great.
Check there.
Definite recommend.
Yep.
And we're not sponsored, but if anyone feels like it,
yeah,
we're open.
Yeah, we're open. Send us your pots. We'll talk about you all day long. All right, so we're talking NPK today.
NPK.
So we're on P.
We're on P.
So
we're on a P.
Let's go.
Your P, my P.
Yeah.
The P's phosphorus, guys.
Phosphorus.
Okay. This is going to help stimulate root growth. Phosphorus is a vigorous growth hormone for plant life. The larger and healthier your root system is, the easier it is for your plant to uptake the nutrients that it needs. So the nitrogen that we just discussed gets taken up through the roots. A surprise, right? And phosphorus is really what helps those roots explode. My first few grows, for example, I didn't use enough phosphorus, for sure. My plants were short, were very airy, they were lanky, or stunted.
Yeah,
I had
stunted,
autoflowers that couldn't get more than a foot tall. They were in a 5-gallon container. They were the best genetics you could get. I think it was like Bruce Banner or it was Lemon AK.
Yeah.
And they were, I had everything perfect. And I said, phosphorus, who needs it?
Yeah.
And that thing didn't grow over a foot. And it got stunted 2 different times.
There you
and
go.
It was a nightmare.
Yep. You can spend all the money you want on seeds.
All the money.
If you're not paying attention to NPK,
Mhm.
you're throwing your money out the window.
Literally.
You might as well be using bag seed.
Exactly. Bag seed would be a better way to test if you got a good amount of phosphorus than one of them big genetics.
That's right.
But seriously, it does. It slows growth like no one's business. So essentially, too much nitrogen is going to look like purple leaves, darkening from the outside, kind of working its way in. You're going to have stunted growth because it's going to have an overage. Pretty much every time you have an overage of nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium, you're going to see stunted growth.
Yep.
Something is going to happen, an imbalance in the plant. You'll see yellow leaves for nitrogen, purple leaves for phosphorus, and I don't know what color leaves for potassium, but you're going to see stunted growth throughout the whole plant. You're going to have smaller leaves, things that won't develop correctly, and maybe you'll put it off to genetics. You'll put it off to DNA. Oh, this is a weird one.
Yep.
But really, your levels, your phosphorus levels. On my last grow, I chose to go with a pulverized rock phosphate, which is just a soft rock that has the minerals in it. It gets ground down into like a flour consistency so that it's a quicker release than if I just chucked a bunch of rocks in the bed.
Lets it break down quicker.
Lets it break down quicker because the whole goal is for the water to pull all the minerals out of the rock phosphate. And having something that's pulverized helps that happen even quicker. Yeah. So you have your slow breakdown from your nitrogen, your slow breakdown from your phosphorus, and everything that we aim to do is just that over time. The whole length of your grow, you want your plant to be sufficient in these levels so that you're not worried, you're not even questioning if you're over. All you're going to be saying is, should I put a little extra? Nah, we're good. Yeah. We don't need to put more on. You just put the levels the box requires. You can even go 3/4 of whatever they tell you to put on, just to be safe.
Yeah.
Let it take its time, and the plant will take it all up, and it'll all digest at a nice even pace for you.
And another thing Justin touched on before is that when you're growing organically, you do have to be preemptive. You do have to get ahead of it and consider how long it's going to take for things to get into your soil. Like this, like he's saying, when they grind this down to this powder state that it comes in, people say, oh, you can throw this in your soil, you can throw that in your soil for whatever it is. But you have to realize that for minerals to break down and actually be something that the plant's root system can absorb, that is dissolved and can be carried with the water through the roots and then feed your plant, that sometimes can take a very long time to do. And so with organics, we do have to stay ahead of that curve all the time.
Very much so.
We got to stay ahead of it.
Absolutely. It definitely helps. The rock phosphate I was talking about, we got it super cheap. I'll add links and descriptions in the section down below. We'll have all of the links to everything that we're talking about, all the different amendments that we use, and we'll have a cost breakdown in the description section of this video. So you can just click below and it'll have everything laid out for you. We'll show you everything that we do, and we'll break it down for how much each grow cost us. Because really, I mean, it barely costs anything per grow. Once you buy the initial startup of these things, we're talking under $100 gets you. What do we do? 10 grows or something off of it. It's amazing.
It can be a little. When you first see a bag and you look, oh, I need a little bit of phosphorus, and it costs you $10, $15, $20 for a bag. But like Justin's saying, that bag's going to last you grow after grow after grow. A lot of times when you're adding, if you're doing a water supplement for something like that, it may be a half a teaspoon or a teaspoon to a gallon or 2 gallons of water. And you're not going to apply that at every watering. So these amendments will go, and fertilizers and stuff will go a long, long way.
Absolutely.
In time. It is your initial startup to have everything on hand. Again, to be proactive and preemptive, as we're saying. But once you're established,
it's coasting.
It coasts.
You know, you spend the initial breakdown of what everything is, and one of the main goals of us doing this is to help people, because we've spent quite a bit of money experimenting on things to find out that you can buy similar products that don't have a fancy brand name, and they do exactly the same. Exactly the same thing. As long as they hit certain parameters, you're in. You don't have to get fooled by the big box brand names. You can do these things on a budget and grow some killer killer grows.
Homegrowing, and the whole thing is a marketing thing like any other,
Absolutely.
anything else out there. And don't be fooled by it.
As soon as you put the name cannabis in front of any amendment, the price doubles.
Yes.
Triples.
Absolutely.
It's a plant, guys.
Yep.
It's the same thing as when you're growing tomatoes. When you're growing pumpkins, it's the same thing.
Or roses. Yeah.
We
just
don't
a plant.
have the same amount of information as you do on all these other plants, so they try to trick you and tell you that you're getting something special because it's for cannabis.
Right.
It's a plant made out of plant.
Yeah. And just like any other plant, it has individual, your NPK.
Right.
We're talking about NPK. And when you go into the store and you start to look at all these different things, you're going to see all these bags and all these different numbers, these 3 numbers. And some are going to be high in the nitrogen, some are going to be high in the phosphorus, some are going to be high in potassium. And they're going to vary from plant to plant. Some plants that like a more acidic base soil and how they absorb nutrients and everything else. And in that case, yes, cannabis does have its own requirements. But in general, those requirements are no more different than every other plant's individual requirements.
Absolutely.
So don't be fooled into thinking that you have to buy cannabis type amendments and fertilizers and soils and stuff. It's not true.
That's not true.
Learn the requirements of the plant and develop your own through your local discount stores.
Yep. If you know any local farmers around that have stores, that have storefronts, smaller greenhouses, things like that, they'll sell some of the same stuff that the big box stores will sell you.
Yep.
Usually at a better price and usually with a better atmosphere.
Yep.
All right. So how does phosphorus help in flowering?
In flowering, this macronutrient is vital for the development of the plant as it goes into flower, to develop all your, not only continue the development of your root system, which is going to deliver everything for a very vibrant flower production and bud production in your plants.
It's pretty, from what I hear, pretty important for like bud growth. Is that any truth to that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
One misconception that seems to go around is that people think if you really boost your phosphorus and you overdo your phosphorus at this time, it will explode your yield and explode your bud growth. As with any nutrient, it's more is not better. There's very little real science to support the idea that phosphorus will give you a better yield.
Okay.
That being said, phosphorus needs to be maintained and needs to be correct for you to get a good yield and a proper yield. Whatever your plant's ability, whatever the genetics of your plants,
Yeah, like that final outcome.
Yeah.
Like it's essentially whatever the genetics can allow.
Right.
If you have too little phosphorus, you won't hit that potential.
Exactly.
But again, with the more is better approach, you can always just stunt the whole thing.
And that's what's going to happen. Right. You're gonna lose the plant
Yeah.
to over nutrient.
I'm feeling a common theme. One of the things I hear a lot is right before flowering, right as you're getting ready to flip, you have to cut back nitrogen and really crank phosphorus. Is that the way you do it?
You're going to hear this. I don't think that's the way to do it. I don't think there's a lot of science. If you look into it, there's not a lot of science that supports this. What you do need to do is maintain the proper level of phosphorus. And that's going to maintain your root system, and it's going to give your plant the delivery system to give you a good yield.
Okay.
It's whatever the plant's genetic capability is going to be maintained, and it's going to deliver on that capability if your phosphorus is correct. Overdoing your phosphorus, you can't create a genetic condition that doesn't exist. And like any other, in any other part of NPK, it's the same thing. More is not going to be better, and what you're going to do is create a deficiency down the line for the plant. Okay. So it's important. Yeah, it's very important to maintain what it should be, and you want to look for the signs. If it's getting too much. Your purple leaves, your purple stems, and that kind of thing with your plant. If your leaves start to cup, some cupping.
That's such a good one.
That's another one that's really, really,
your leaves literally.
They'll start to cup up on
like a taco,
and they're going to be telling you,
fold up.
Yep.
Just like this, like a taco.
That's going to give you an indication of where your phosphorus is.
Is that an overage or an under? Do you know?
That's an underage.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
I believe that's accurate. I believe it's an under.
So if
It's
they're asking,
too
think of it this way: they're saying, "Hey, give me more, give me more." You know,
More
that's what they want.
more
Give me some
phosphorus,
phosphorus,
please.
you know?
Hey, come on, give me some phosphorus.
But yeah, and again, if it goes too high, you're going to see your plant's growth slow down.
Yep.
Everything seems to come to a halt, and you'll get to know the rhythm of your plants as you look at them. And you can see in a couple days, you start looking, nothing's going on in here.
Right.
Something's up. They're trying to tell you something.
Right, because when you flip to flowering, things are going to start moving.
Yep.
You got a couple days where there's a little bit of a, not so much a down period, but everything's starting to bud up and getting ready to really explode. And if you're too little on phosphorus, you're never going to have what a lot of people call the boofening.
Yeah.
You'll have your nugs, they'll be tiny little ones. I know, I've grown a lot of them. Small little nugs. And then what's
a lot of small little nugs, yeah.
And then what's supposed to happen is sooner or later they're supposed to, and they're supposed to explode. Yeah. They're supposed to hit a spot where they do it. But they can't do that if you have too little phosphorus. If you haven't already set your plant up to be ready for that to happen, it's going to have a massive, when you flip the flower, your plants are going to be so thirsty. They're going to be sucking up water.
They're going to suck up a ton of water.
No one's business. Yep. They drink and drink and drink, and in that water, they're taking in the slow degrading nitrogen from our chop and drop.
Yep.
They're taking in the phosphorus from
and now they're starting to demand the phosphorus.
Right, now they're they're demanding it. Now it becomes super critical.
Yep.
The nitrogen, like we were saying, fades off, falls off. The phosphorus starts to kick in, and then it's really what starts driving the plant to really pull up nutrients from the soil.
Absolutely.
Or from the ground.
Right.
You're going to need other nutrients as well, but without phosphorus, you're not taking up calcium, you're not taking up magnesium, you're not taking up anything you need, essentially. Yeah. You literally fall flat.
Without it, all the other metabolic activities will not come together in concert.
Completely stops.
It won't happen.
You won't get any feeder roots that come up to the top that start to eat off the top of the soil.
You won't see your initial stretch.
Right. You won't get your stretch during flowering. You won't have the later stage around probably like day 10 to 20-ish where they really start to fatten up. Yep. None of that will happen. You'll have taco leaves, hoping, looking for some more soup cups, and you'll get real long, stringy, airy crap.
Yeah.
Crap.
Yep.
Pretty much. Some people say that if you're unsure about how much fertilizer to add, to just put more on. Don't be a moron.
Don't be a moron.
Don't be these people. Most times less is more, like we're going to reiterate a lot of times throughout this podcast. We specifically choose organic because it is harder to overdo things. Don't be like these people. Most of the times less is more, especially in the garden. Here's a helpful tip. Most products you purchase have a recommended amount that you should use. They created the product. I think they have just a small insight on how potent their product is.
A little bit more than us.
Most companies do research, R&D, some of them do R&D and figure out how strong their stuff is. So if they say put a cup on, don't say, you know what, I know better than the guys who created this product, I'm gonna put 2 cups on. Go with 3/4 of a cup.
Yeah.
So that way, if you, in 3 weeks or 2 weeks, when all this starts to break down and you're looking at it and going, you know, I could add a little more, I could still give it a little bit. You can put that last 1/4 of a cup on.
Absolutely.
And not be like, oh, did I burn it? Did I do too much?
Right.
Guys, it's real simple. Slow and steady wins the race. You keep everything nice and level throughout your grow, and your plant will do what it needs to do. You can get crazy later on, but if you're with us and you're trying to learn how to grow, we're trying to grow something.
Exactly.
We're trying to cultivate something.
Learn your fundamentals.
Learn your fundamentals with everything, whether it's driving or boxing or anything really, gardening. NPK is your basics. That's where you need to start, and that's what you need to master before you start getting the mad scientist.
Yeah, you want to play Frankenstein, that's great, but you're not going to be able to do that until you learn your fundamentals.
Exactly. This is where everything starts and where everything stops.
Absolutely.
One of these 3 is off, you're not growing. It's not happening. So however you want to do it, go your own route, just know, don't put more on.
Okay, so we've covered the N and the P in the NPK, and now that brings us to potassium, also quite often referred to as potash, what you'll hear people refer to as potash. And Justin will take us into why that is important in the grow, as well as the other 2.
Well, I like to think that potassium is kind of like the immune system of the plant.
Yeah.
The way that I was taught it back in the day was that your potassium is going to help your plant protect from environmental changes. If it's an outdoor plant, you're growing things outdoor, you're going to have, sometimes you plant a little early and you have fighting frost. And then you have bugs. Bugs will come in and try to eat your plants. And potassium is actually a way that the plant can kind of fight back and survive those kind of stresses. Without potassium, you're super susceptible to moldy mildew. Certain people will cultivate strains that can fight off these things. But without potassium or potash, it doesn't matter. It's not happening. You will be susceptible to so many different environmental changes. Your plant won't be able to handle stress. It won't be able to survive any light strength training you do. It won't be able to survive any deficiencies. You'll see deficiencies hit a lot harder if those levels aren't on. And it's very important for the movement of water and nutrients throughout the plant tissue. So not only is it a immune system protectant, it's also a delivery system.
Right.
That helps, just like nitrogen and phosphorus,
Yeah.
helps everything move from the top of the plant all the way through the bottom of the plant. So you feed it down in your roots, and the highest leaf up, your tallest bud at the top, is going to get potassium just like the bottom. It goes throughout the whole entire plant, super vital for photosynthesis. And additionally, potassium will help improve anything that you're willing to throw at it.
Yep.
Whether you're the problem or the environment is the problem.
Yeah, and the environment's going to find things to throw at your plant.
Yes,
Inevitably, it will always find a thing. And it can be a real bummer, man, when you put in so much work and money and your time into your plants, and they're really coming along well, and you're seeing a development you really hope to see, just to have it all be infiltrated with mold and stuff like that, which is simply
the saddest thing.
Could just be avoided by maintaining potassium.
Right. And again, one of these things, you're not trying to go over, you're not trying to hit it hard. Like we're going to reiterate so many times until you stop watching this podcast. Everything is nice and slow. It's slow and steady wins the race. What I like to use for an amendment is, I can never say this correctly, but langbeinite. It's similar to rock phosphate in cost and in application. A lot of people will use a kelp meal.
Okay.
A lot of people, honestly, will just take up some hardwood that they've burned in their fireplace or chimney and put it right into your grow. That takes super long.
Yeah.
It's not a quick one, but it is a water-soluble way to get some potassium and potash into your grow.
A good gray ash is really fine.
Good gray ash. Oh yes, right.
Yeah, you can even mix it with water, and you can mix your ash with water and pour it into your soil as well.
Some of the deficiencies for potassium is going to be weak stalks, some immature roots, and really is going to leave the plant susceptible to insects. We do right now all of our growing indoors, and I still get thrips. I had a moth in my grow.
Yeah, I've had a couple moths. I don't even know how they got in there, but they find their way. It's amazing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You'll find crickets sometimes. Don't understand where they come from, but it's nature, man. It's going to find a way to get in.
Yeah, and live living soils too can bring in
living
things.
Soils
come in your
bring
soils,
in bugs.
and things will hatch out of your soil.
It will.
And that's a good quality soil. It's
is.
not a sign of a bad soil by any means.
Oh.
But it will happen.
Just like with everything, bugs have good and bad ways.
And good and bad bugs.
Good and bad bugs that will help or destroy. But potassium will help those bugs that want to eat your plants. It'll help your plant be able to survive until you can get in. Put some neem oil on it, dry out the system.
We'll do a whole nother podcast just on bugs.
The extensiveness you can get into that is insane. So all right, man, how does it do in flowering?
Flowering, potassium is very important in flowering. It's a lot of people refer to it as the quality element.
Okay.
And when you're getting into things like the size of your buds, the color of your buds, the aroma of your buds, potassium plays a huge role in that. If you really want a quality harvest, you're going to have to maintain the levels of your potassium.
Yeah.
One of the things to look for with potassium, if you're looking as far as the deficiency, yellowing leaves, a lack of vigor in your plants, like so many other parts of the NPK, that too will occur. One thing about potassium is knowing your calcium level in your soil. Calcium, a lack of calcium will prevent your plant's ability to absorb its potassium. Later in flower, as you're getting closer to harvest, you're gonna see a lot of your leaves actually turning yellow. This isn't a lack of potassium necessarily. This could be senescence. Senescence is that end stage of the plant that we see right before we harvest, where the plant is now drawing from its leaves. It's drawing all its energy out of there. It stopped using its root system. It stopped pulling from the soil. It's no longer using a soil requirement, and instead is pulling from itself. So while we say, well, potassium in flowering, look for yellowing leaves, that's at the earlier stages of flowering. Towards the end, you're not going to see that.
Yeah.
And but the other important thing, thing that you really need to consider is if you're suspecting that you're having a problem earlier in flowering, you're seeing some yellowing leaves, you're seeing a lack of vigor, your plants are looking kind of weak, whatever, but you don't suspect that your potassium is off, consider your calcium. Without calcium, your plant cannot absorb and utilize potassium. So you really need to, at that point, consider whether you're
So even if you have accurate levels of potassium, the other macronutrients that we'll get into in depth later, things like calcium, will also be like they play a tag team game.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
So while it's not on the NPK scale, it still is a contributing factor.
Right, and that's something we have to mention at this point, because with potassium being as important as it is, in flowering, in your whole grow, entirely throughout your entire grow. But it also can be something where you can really get lost trying to figure out, why does my plant look like it's not getting potassium? And I know there's enough potassium there, when in reality it's because it doesn't have the calcium. Without the calcium, that's your driver. That's your driver that helps it use it. So, and again, as we're going through NPK, we've talked about today and everything else, they all work in unison.
Right.
They all kind of come together as, it's a concert effect where they have to, one helps the other one, and without one, it throws off the whole thing.
Exactly.
So it takes practice. It all sounds like a lot, because it kind of is a lot.
It kind of is.
But when you love to grow and you love your grow and you get out there and you get your hands in it every day and you watch it, you're gonna learn it, and it is fun. It's a lot of fun. That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. We're doing all this. We're doing this to hopefully help someone out there learn one thing about any of this.
Yeah. And maybe you can avoid 1 or 2 or 10 of the pitfalls that we've been through.
Wait till we show you guys
and
some
spend
of
a
the
little bit more time smiling at your grow instead of crying at your grow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
try to do everything as organically as possible.
Right.
We try to set up our soils as organically as possible using worm castings and worm teas and sprout teas and everything else. But you will get to points in your grow where you will need a quick resolution to a problem.
Right.
And sometimes your hands are tied and you'll need to resort more to a water-soluble type of amendment.
You go on vacation. You didn't set yourself up for flowering.
Right.
You were just a little bit behind the curve.
Yep.
You noticed the problem as it came in later, and you needed to go, damn, I need something now.
So, we know a bunch of people will blow up our mailbag saying, hey, that's not completely organic. We're well aware of that. But when you've invested 4 months into a grow and everything's looking really good, and you need to correct a problem, there's ways of going out and buying these water soluble products and try to buy them responsibly. Buy the good ones, buy the ones that are made from a company who's trying to do it as organically and using as much raw material as possible.
Yeah.
Because among those, there's garbage out there.
There's garbage.
There is absolute garbage. There is snake oil. There is, a whole plethora of products out there. But sometimes you do have to go with something that's a little more fast acting to save to
save the whole grow.
To save the grow that you've put months and dollars
bunch of time,
into.
Money, effort, care, stress.
So we're well aware that sometimes it's not perfect.
A perfect grow is completely organic, natural materials. But hey, if it ends up saving your grow and you had to use it one time, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
It's not. What we have happening in the grow this week. Hopefully, someone found this information is useful. And a useful introduction into the NPK and why it's important for you to be a successful gardener at every level. professionals down to beginners are using these same methods.
That's right.
So don't be
NPK
afraid
is everything. NPK is the foundation to all your grows.
to everything.
Everything. It's where everything starts and where everything comes from. So
Absolutely.
the more you learn about NPK, the more you understand NPK and how you can apply it into your grow, the more success you're going to have.
That's a great point. That's absolutely true. If you guys noticed anything we missed, or you had any information you want us to touch on, feel free to leave us a comment below down in the comment section. You can hit us up, you can direct message us, email us. We have a website at growrightorganics.com. Feel free to check it out. We're just getting everything started. A like and a subscribe or a comment will help us keep the lights on and hopefully keep helping people learn how to grow. So we'll see you guys on the next Gro Show.
Yeah, thanks for checking us out.
See ya.